This is the Creageivity Podcast.
Episode 9.
That was a wonderful track for our introduction, and it's called Introduction. It comes from the songwriter, musician, stonecarver, piano tuner, and many other things that we'll be finding out about. Old Man Thompson. Welcome, Old Man Thompson. Thanks for joining us on Creageivity.
Greetings, my children. Hello.
I want to know why Old Man Thompson. But first, hello, Adrienne.
Hello, Harlan. Hello, Emil, as I know you. I don't particularly know you as Old Man Thompson, but realise that's the title under which you produce your fantastic music.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Which I love. And it's got a sort of whimsical quality, but with balls.
Whimsy with balls. There's an image to conjure with. Now I do music purely for my love of it, and I don't have any expectations about any of it or what happens to it. And that's a very freeing thing. And now I can just go off into flights of fantasy and just do my own thing. Mm-hmm. I think actually a lot of it comes down from my great-granddad, who was also a songwriter and a music hall performer and a comedian and a cross-dressing impersonator. All this I didn't know about until much later in life, but I can see how some of that has got down here. You know, it's amazing. Yeah.
I didn't realise you were a cross-dresser, Emil. Or is that to come?
Not all the time. You know, only when I've got my nightgown on.
What a legacy.
There's already so much to unpack, but Gaelic whimsy. Yeah. So you're a Scot living in Scotland, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Although, you know, like most of us, mixed ancestry, a bit of Irish, a bit of Yorkshire thrown in there as well.
And let's get back to this question about Old Man Thompson. It's very much our demographic to be slightly elderly. But when did you get this name?
I did a lot of performing with my mate, Andy Spiller. We had a little acoustic duo and we did a lot of gigs. And when the pandemic came, obviously that all stopped, but we never picked up the baton again afterwards. And I just felt like I wanted to do something, but I didn't want to do what I was doing before. And I also had this thing of turning 60 this year. I wanted to somehow embrace the fact that I was now older. And I always had this feeling that, you know, being a singer-songwriter and going up there on the stage and performing, it was somewhat, I was beginning to feel that it was a bit of a young person's thing or a younger person's thing. And there's so many bright young people coming up doing amazing stuff. You know, I just thought, I should really just maybe relax into the idea of being older and just embrace that, but also like let go of all the facade and all the ideas I had about who I might have been, you know, as a performer earlier on, and really just get into the pure creative thing of writing and recording songs, and also not having to perform on a stage, which is actually very liberating, because I always felt a little bit uncomfortable about it. It was never something that sat totally well with me, even though I kind of enjoyed it. You probably know that yourself. It's one of those things where it can be fun to do, but it can also be excruciatingly horrible as well. So I just thought, why trouble yourself with all that when you could just write some nice songs exactly the way you want them to be and just put them out there. And if anyone hears them, that's wonderful. That's all I want from it, really.
Mm-hmm.
The process and to make the thing and to put it out into the world.
Mm.
And to me, that's the essence of it. I'm a lot happier doing that, actually. I was thinking about my granddad. He was the mayor of Carnoustie at one time, and he used to ride about in his big car, and he knew everyone in the town. And I thought, yeah, old man Thompson. It seemed like a slightly apt kind of way to see myself now that I was at this stage of life. It kind of rolls off the tongue. I like it. It's always been difficult, again, finding a name to give yourself as a performer. I've never really liked my own name particularly either. Mm. So it was nice to find this kind of just relaxing, comfortable, quirky, and like, what was the word you used, Adrienne, to describe it?
Whimsical, yes.
Yeah. It gave me a chance to invent a kind of a character and to invent a world and to inhabit it with all sorts of things, My partner is also a writer and a poet, and we love making up these stories and imaginary things. We do a lot of that, actually. It seemed like the natural thing to do. And I will continue to make songs and put them out there as long as I can.
I think that's what's delightful about the music. It does create a world. It creates an atmosphere.
Yeah.
And you can almost feel the influence of Gaelic folklore and the environment that you're living in.
Yeah.
And so it's very complete. It's very holistic, something like that. I love that idea.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel like that about it, because it was very much a conceit. And Old Man Thompson originally, in my mind, was this imaginary character. He was an ancestor. Mm-hmm. And we'd been finding these old cassettes and tapes in the box in our archive.
Uh-huh.
Here at Thompson Sharp House, which is a nod to Cecil Sharp, and because Rebecca Sharp is my partner, and I just thought, yeah, how nice to have this archive, and you're gradually bringing things out of it and putting them out into the world, a couple of generations after.
Yeah. That's
the conceit, but of course it's not true.
And to support this, you've become a Fat Cat record company executive, haven't you?
Yeah. It started with Souterrain Press. Rebecca started, really, because she's always been a writer and poet and has made loads of publications and done loads of shows. I just suddenly thought, well, let's take all the music archive and join it onto it and make it a kind of it's less of a record company and more of an archive repository for all the work that's been done, not just by myself, but other people I've known over the years. That part of the story is true. They are sitting in a big box full of cassettes. There's hundreds in there. And I occasionally dig them out and go through them and see what I can find.
Souterrain meaning underground?
Yes, because that's a very Scottish thing as well. We have these things up here called souterrains, which are Neolithic underground chambers. Nobody really knows what they were for, but they're dotted around the place, and you can go down inside them and sit there in the darkness. They're underground chambers. Goodness knows what they were for, but they call them souterrains. They could have been used for ritual or ceremonial purposes. I don't know. And I'll just love the word underground, from the French sous and terrain, ground. The music is also underground, which is what I love about it. So it seems like a good fit, And it's nice that it can connect to Souterrain Press as well. It's like a little publishing mini empire that we've got going here, this little cottage thing,
Let's have a listen to another track from your latest release, which is called Sailing to Portmanteau. It's an EP on Souterrain Sounds by Old Man Thompson. And I've never heard this phrase before, but this is an ekphrastic song.
Yeah.
Before we listen to this song called The Poet, can you explain what ekphrastic is?
It's a wonderful word that you must adopt. Ekphrastic poems and ekphrastic songs. If you see a piece of visual art and it inspires you to write something, that's called an ekphrastic piece, because you're taking inspiration from a piece of visual art. And in the case of The Poet, there was a wonderful print done in the Glasgow Printmakers Workshop in Kelvin Grove in Glasgow. And I saw this picture, this screen print, and thought how lovely it was. This poet lying down with all these strange symbols above him. It's done by Adrienne Wisniewski. I think that's how you say his name. My friend Andy said, hey, we went to that exhibition and we're going to try and write some songs about our favourite prints. And I thought, yeah, that's a great idea. So that's where the poet came from. The image really did inspire the song. And you might notice in the chorus, it's got this strange chorus about the bird that never flew and the tree that never grew.
Yeah.
The fish that never swam and the bell that never rang.
Yeah.
What that is this very strange enigmatic motif that is attached to the Glasgow coat of arms. I think it's to do with Saint Mungo, who is the patron saint of Glasgow. These words, I just love them. They're so strange.
They're very enigmatic, aren't they?
They're mysterious. I'm not really sure what it means at all. But the fact that this big city has got that as its slogan,
it's rather wonderful.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, let's listen to The Poet from your new EP on Souterrain Sounds. So here's The Poet.
The artist makes an image with ink and silk and screen, the portrait of a poet lost in a waking dream. The poet lays there waiting for images to rise, like messages from muses that sing from the northern skies. And the tenements like ribbons stretch across the town. The river winds its way back home like a train in the underground. Now here's the bird that never flew and a fish that never swam, and here's the tree that never grew and a silent bell that can never tell. The artist takes his picture and hangs it on the wall, and every day the people stare and the poet sees them all. Now symbols keep their secrets, so guess them if you can. There's nothing conjures magic like a pen in a poet's hand. Now here's the bird that never flew and the fish that never swam, and here's the tree that never grew and a silent bell, yeah, there's that as well. So if you see the poet, I hope you understand that no one conjures magic like a pen in a poet's hand, like a pen in a poet's hand, like a pen in a poet's hand.
Are all the instruments played by you here, along with production?
Yeah, I've got this funny little guitar, which is a strange little hybrid thing that I keep adding bits to. And it's got this very plunky, old folky sound. I use that as my main instrument. And then all the other parts, the piano and the string section, all that stuff is all added by me. And you know, it sounds actually quite convincing. These days, you can do the most amazing things with quite basic stuff, actually. I've just got an iPad and a little MIDI keyboard. And, you know, I'm amazed by how you can make it sound. Luckily, I've got a bit of facility on the piano as well, which helps a lot. But the guitar is the main thing. I
was very interested in the sound of the guitar, and I'm interested when you say it's clunky, because there's something about the bass end of the guitar. It sort of goes... It doesn't ring out, and yet the top end of the guitar is really bright and sparkly. What's going on here?
I'll tell you exactly what's going on. I got given this guitar by a very brilliant poet called Don Patterson, who you might know. And he broke this guitar and the neck got cracked and he gave it to me. It was just an old Yamaha APX 12-string guitar. I decided, in my wisdom, to saw the headstock in half, turn it into a 6-string guitar, put a bit of glue in the crack on the neck. But then I went further. I put flat wound jazz strings on it.
Wow.
They're like steel jazz strings. And then I bought this crappy little pickup off eBay and put it in the sound hole. It's more like a jazz box. But the other thing which coincidentally happened, I don't know if you know this, but Taylor Swift started this huge craze for this thing called a rubber bridge. Have you heard of that?
Yes.
You replace your bridge basically with a strip of rubber, and it makes this very dead, sort of like plunky sound. Now, I don't have that, but my guitar just sort of sounds like that anyway because of these strings, you know. But I love the sound of it. And I also use a thing called a partial capo, which just covers 3 of the strings. So you get these rather lovely modal tunings. I think there's a lot to be said for creating your own sound by tinkering with your instruments and doing things to them that you wouldn't normally do. You know, you think about people like Brian May and his guitar made out of a mantelpiece and stuff. It wouldn't have sounded like that if he hadn't just bodged it together himself with his dad, you know. So in this age of homogenized sound, all instruments sound very similar. It's great to be able to do something that just sticks out a little bit, that catches, like say, catches people's ears. I'm
going to start taking a saw and hammer and chisel to my guitars immediately after this session.
Well, didn't Keith Tippett used to put bricks on the piano strings, didn't he?
Yeah, treated piano. John Cage did that as well. All sorts of toothpicks and hair clips and all sorts of stuff in there. Yeah. It's a great thing, tinkering with the sound. It's wonderful. You know, all sorts of unexpected, accidental things occur.
You've done a lot of collaboration, I think, with people, including one of our previous guests on Creageivity, John May. You were responsible for an album recording with him. He remembers it as a day. I remember it as very late at night. But he rolled in with his guitar from the pub. And I had my little studio set up in my living room. And I just sat him down with his guitar and a mic. And he just did these songs. He did this whole set of songs in one go. And I think he'd had them there for all this time, just brewing away. And he did it in one go, and that was it. Had a cup of tea, went home. And honestly, I really love that album. It's just so do I. Yeah,
so live and spontaneous, and the songs are brilliant. I mean, he's a poet. He has a way with words. You know, he knows how to convey things. And I'm so pleased we did that. I would love to do another one with him. But I don't know how that will work out. You know, we'll see. Maybe. And speaking of poets, Adrienne, you have a connection here that you want to talk about, I think.
Yes, I do, because it sort of links in nicely with collaborations as well. I'm really fond of this whole album. It's called Black Lake. And this is a collaboration you made with the poet Emmanuel Williams, who has a beautiful sonorous voice and creates universes from his imagination. I've been pestering you to please give us a track from that, and here it is. Frontline Man from the Black Lake album.
He's seen too much. He's overexposed. Passed beyond all limits years ago. Smashed all the statues he encountered. Detonated several hundred minor gods. Found the happy medium by accident and lost it in a bar downtown. What truths remain intact? Which myths still holds their meaning? Every night's another bomb destroys the kitchen. A fresh conspiracy subverts his dreams. Pray for him, my friends. There's no place left for him to run to. They jump from cumulus and surf. They grin behind their triggers, dodge the mines behind his eyes, and close in for another final kill.
Frontline Man, is that entirely improvised? Were you reacting to Emmanuel's words, or did you work on that beforehand?
It's entirely improvised. We happened to be neighbours at the time. He lived in the cottage next to me. And so he would sometimes come round of an evening and bring his big old keyboard that he had and sit it down. And I had a little cassette 4-track. And we just picked a few of his poems and went through them. And that one is a powerful poem. I loved it because it gave me a chance to just really let rip on the guitar. It was an acoustic guitar, but I was just reacting to the lines as he said them. It was very much a freestyle, free improv kind of thing. I actually think it came out really well. Again, that thing just sat in a box for 30 years or something like that. And then I just found it recently and thought, whoa.
It's brilliant.
I'd forgotten all about it.
Yeah.
I think it's lovely. It's a real little time capsule.
And that's on Souterrain?
That's on Souterrain Sounds as well. It's actually called the Black Lake Tapes. I know Emmanuel's heard it. He lives in California, but I've not seen him for many, many years. But it's lovely to be able to get something out there. There's another album of his called Socks on there as well, which is a much longer extended album of poems and music. It gives me a lot of pleasure to be able to let people hear these things because, you know, they're just sitting in boxes otherwise.
What is your take on this process of the desire to start archiving as we get older? I'm experiencing the same. And certainly John May, who we've talked with, is the archivist supreme, I guess.
Gosh, he is. Yeah, he really is.
What's your personal thing? Why do you feel the need to dig into all these old boxes that are around?
I don't know exactly where that impulse comes from, but I've always done it. I've always kept things that I've made and stashed them away. I realized a little while ago that it's actually quite important to do that because my great-granddad was a music hall performer. And a few years ago, a family member said, here, you might be interested in this. And it was an old handwritten music book, manuscript full of songs and tunes that my great-granddad had written and had performed on the stage at the turn of the last century. I thought, my God, I didn't even know this existed. And then when I started digging into it, I found lots of newspaper archive cuttings about his shows. And when I asked my mum what happened to all his stuff, she said, oh, I think Auntie Rose threw it away. All his wigs and outfits and all his posters from the show, from the music hall gigs he did and music, who knows what else. But you see, the family didn't really value that as having any importance. They thought, oh, it's just Grappy's old stuff, you know. And I thought, oh, man, that's not good. You know, it would have been great to have that stuff, to know a bit about where he was coming from and what he did. I did manage to find that quite a lot by just rooting around and asking questions. I eventually got a couple of posters from the theatres, and lots of strange family connections came out that I didn't know about. I made a blog about him, and people visited that and said, hey, I hadn't heard of that guy. I managed to track down a very old man who knew one of his songs. This is the thing. There was no lyrics. And I eventually found an old guy that was living in Dundee, and he said to me, yeah, my granny was a big fan of your great-granddad, and people used to queue down the road to see him when he was playing.
Wow.
And he said, she taught me this tune, and he sang me this medley that was my great-granddad's. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. I was like, oh, my God. I didn't think I would ever hear the songs. So I recorded them and included them in the blog. They're a little bit rude and a bit sort of double entendre. But that was his act, you know.
Yeah.
He'd come on dressed up as an Irish tinker woman and with children strapped on his back and stuff, and do this kind of these numbers. And there's all these newspaper articles. There's one where a woman fainted from laughter and had to get carried out of the music hall. They stopped the show when she was resuscitated, they brought her back in and started the show again.
Lovely.
His obituary said he was the most cheerful man in Dundee.
Is that a hard thing to be the most cheerful man in Dundee?
Yeah, he was Irish as well, wasn't he? He wasn't even from there. But
But you mentioned he dressed as a woman. Is that where the cross-dressing came from?
that was quite a common thing in the musical days back then to do cross-dressing. They did these shows twice a night. It was 3-hour shows.
Wow.
And they weren't professional performers. They did this as a sideline, and then went back to their day jobs. I'm very proud of my musical ancestry, but to go back to your archive question, that's why I think it's really good to keep an archive of the things you make, because descendants will say, oh yeah, I heard that guy was a bit musical or something. Maybe my great granddad, I think he was a bit of a singer-songwriter. And if you'd been in my position, you would have had to do an awful lot of digging to find out that was actually true. Whereas I think now, if I leave all my stuff in some sort of state that's accessible, then my future generations will be able to hear it and maybe learn some of these songs themselves. How lovely would that be?
Agreed.
That's one good reason anyway for doing it.
I wonder, apart from the legacy aspect of it, which you're describing, is it for your own self as well? Because I must say, sometimes I'm utterly surprised if I hear something I wrote, say, 20 years ago. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. It's a shock. It's, oh, I've always had creativity in my life, apparently. Oh, right. And then it's like a necklace of beads that you keep recovering until it comes right up to this day. So it's a bit like recovering aspects of yourself and your own creativity. Do you find that for you?
This is another thing that's really important that I'd love to talk about. I mean, this podcast you're doing is wonderful because it's about creativity in later life. And that's so important because, to your question, I realized a long time ago that it was so important for me to honor my creativity, my inner nature, that if I didn't do that, I would get incredibly depressed. And then I'd suddenly go, oh yeah, I've not been making anything. I've not painted a picture or written a song. And then as soon as I started doing that again, I felt an awful lot better. And I came to the conclusion that you're not honoring your inner nature. And if you don't do that, you will get miserable.
Yeah.
It's the essence of who I am, to create things. And if I don't honor that, then it's not good. I don't do well if I'm not doing that. I think when I was younger, and this is probably true for a lot of people, you get knocked off course sometimes. I got diverted into the sciences because people said, oh, get a proper job. Again, the arts were not valued. It wasn't a proper thing. And so science can be creative. I see that. And I was quite good at it in a way. I understood how it worked. But that's because I've got a creative mind. And for a long time, I was miserable going, oh, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. And then when the penny finally dropped, when I connected with my creativity and my art properly, then my life changed completely. And I thought, oh, yeah, this is what I was supposed to be doing. But it kind of got hidden. It got obfuscated from me for a long time, So it's got a lot to do with upbringing and where you get diverted into as a young person. If you are a creative person, I think we all are actually, then you've really got to try and find that and connect with it if you want to have a half satisfactory life, in my view.
Amen to that, indeed. Hallelujah.
Yeah.
We're coming up to playing another of your tracks. It's actually the title track of your latest EP release, Sailing into Portmanteau. I want to broach the idea before we play it that there are some songs that are outside of genres. I had a particular thought about The Boxer by Paul Simon and The Weight by the band. The first time I ever heard those songs, I didn't know whether they were pop songs or rock songs or folk songs or whatever. Yeah. And I get that feeling from your songs. I don't know what they are. And now you mentioned music hall, and I'm thinking there's an element of that as well in what I hear. So are you consciously avoiding genres, or is that just the way you roll?
There was no conscious decision about that at all. You know what a portmanteau is, right?
I do, and I actually looked up to see if there is such a place as portmanteau, And there isn't.
No.
So I thought,
No, there's not.
okay, this guy's being kind of clever. He's using it as the portmanteau word.
I just thought, I can imagine a town called Portmanteau. And I sat down with a friend of mine and I came up with this little chord structure. And these words were just straight off the top of my head. They just came out, Suddenly there was all these bizarre characters inhabiting this place, and it was almost like a pub for the ghosts of sailors or something like that, all these strange characters with these slightly tragic lives that have ended up in Portmanteau.
Yeah.
And that's like where they go at the end, this eternal pub that's there every night.
I was reminded of The Wait in that there is a cast of characters. In the band song The Wait, there's Chester and Fanny and Carmen and so on. And there's all these characters pop up in your song, Sailing to Portmanteau.
And the image that accompanies it is beautiful. It's fascinating. Where do you get these amazing images from? Because they're all kind of symbolic and mysterious.
I think it's all about stories and mythology. Where I live now and my partner, we're very into the mythology of things and the symbolic representations of things. And there's a lot of magical elements to the way we live. We make sigils. I don't know if you know what they are. They're magic symbols. And I have all these strange carvings outside the front of the house. So we've sort of created this like strange magical enclave here. And there's even an old gable end outside of an old cottage right in our garden. And I call it Gable's End, like it's some mansion in the woods or something. But yeah, these characters just came straight out of my imagination. I have no idea who they are or why they're there. They just seem to emerge. I have to say, I think that's what songwriting is all about. And you probably both get this. There are times when just stuff comes through you. It's not really you. It's just coming from somewhere and you don't know where. On a good day, it will just come out well. And you'll be like, oh, you might have to tweak a few words to make it fit. But generally, it's there. That's why I love improvising, because it's almost like opening the stream of consciousness.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then if you record it, you can go back and say, oh, wow, that's interesting. Right. Yeah.
Where did that come from? That's a great feeling. And it certainly feels like you tapped into something somewhere.
And every songwriter that I've ever read or researched has said the same thing. They all say, I don't know, this stuff just comes from somewhere through me. It wasn't me. I channeled it, basically. I think that's what happens. As soon as you go into that mental space where you're just free-flowing, the things just come through.
Get out of the way, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's listen to Sailing to Portmanteau by Old Man Thompson.
Sailing to Portmanteau, there's nowhere else left to go tonight. Look, see the harbour lights burn bright. If we make land, we'll be all right. Old Norma Jean, she pours the drinks for us. But there's always something else to make of us. Archibald Gray has been found dead again. We drink to his death, he was our friend. And then Bobby George, he left his seat. Slowly he rose to his feet, and then he almost fell, but we held him up, then sat him back down again and filled his cup. Robertson Brown was on the scene. But nobody knows what he means to say. He opens his mouth, but he makes not a sound. It's been 10 years since his ship went down. Alistair Cruikshank lost his cool. Though he ended up playing the fool again. When he got home, his wife was there on the stair. She lashed out and he fell down in despair. Oh, we're sailing to Portmanteau. There's something you've got to know about. If you go down to Portmanteau tonight, you won't come back again before daylight.
Oh, I love that track. It's so atmospheric. It really is.
Each time I've listened to that, it's caught my attention, and it's just the way you phrase the lyrics of something you've got to know about. And it falls into the next line. And Archibald Gray had been found dead again. And I don't know why that is, that it just so appeals to me. But I would expect that line to scan Archibald Gray has been found dead again.
Yeah.
But that little gap is masterful, I think. I love that.
Yeah, I love music that does that, that sort of plays with the tempo and the meter of the words.
Yeah.
You know, when things overspill into other lines, I love that. It's great. But that way, again, that was just the way it came out. You know, it was very... I love the idea that he'd been found dead again.
Again.
You know, like, people are going to say, what?
Getting to be a habit.
And the image for this particular track is, and for the EP, is wonderful. It's a bunch of old sailors in a boat, in a rowing boat.
Yeah, they're sailing out to fishing on the Faroe Islands, taken in 1887. Mm-hmm. And some guy found it and colorized it and made it look like it was almost modern. But yeah, it's a fantastic picture, isn't it?
Yeah,
I just loved that. It was that was the atmosphere I was going for. You know, I thought, oh, that's it. That's them on the way to Portmanteau.
And you hear them singing at the end. I mean, that's those guys singing along.
Yeah, that's them.
And the risks those guys took when you see the very first lifeboats and you see the old whaling boats, and they just set off into this unknown place on these flimsy little things.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That's an interesting thing that you should say that, Adrienne. There's a lot of whaling connections with Dundee. It was a big whaling port back in the day. And in fact, some people say that Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein because she was staying in Broughty Ferry, just outside Dundee at the time.
Wow.
She used to go down onto the beach for a walk, and they would be dismembering whales.
Wow.
So there was all this blood and guts and stuff there, and she probably saw that as a child when she was, you know, in her teens. And they say that's probably where she got some of those ideas from, which is very fascinating connection, isn't it?
Absolutely.
In the introduction, I said you're a stonecarver and a piano tuner, among other things. Are those both true?
You know, this is another strange story, but when I was a kid, and talking of connecting with your creativity, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I I found a couple of like aerated breeze blocks on the waste ground beside my house. And for some reason, I took it upon myself to go and find an old hammer and an old crappy old screwdriver and carve two heads out of these blocks. And my mum said, that was amazing that you did. You just made those heads. They were amazing. You know? And so years and years and years later, I was traveling and I bumped into a bunch of stonemasons in the south of France. And they took me into this little exhibition they had in a ruined house. And they said, here, play this a lithophone. They'd made this instrument out of a piece of stone and you could play it with a bone. And these guys were incredibly cool. And I just suddenly felt something. I thought, there's something in this. There's something, you know, that I need to pay attention to. And when I went back to England, I pulled up the van in a yard and lo and behold, got out, sat down with a cup of tea, and there was a whole bunch of stone carvings that someone had been making just right beside where I'd stopped. And I just suddenly went, oh, God, I've got to do stone carving. I just knew it. And it went right back to that childhood thing. So I went and signed up for a stonemasonry course in Dorset, in Weymouth.
Amazing. And
learned how to do that. And now I just do stone carving as a lovely hobby. You know, I make these kind of weird little heads and all sorts of sort of portraits and bird baths and relief carvings. And they're all fairly kind of mythological as well. Mm-hmm. But that's something that I connected with. And, you know, amazingly, again, someone said, did you know your granddad was a stonemason? Wow. And I was like, you are kidding. I didn't know that. Because he'd done that and then changed his profession or something. And nobody knew. And a family member that just happened to mention it to me. And I was like, oh, God, these things do come down through the genes, don't they? You know, all this stuff. So, yeah, the stone carving is a wonderful meditative, creative process that I would encourage anybody to have a go at because it's deeply rewarding and anyone can do it.
And the piano tuning? I didn't know there were any pianos left in the world.
There are fewer and fewer, but luckily, there are fewer and fewer piano tuners as well. So I do manage to sort of eke out a small living doing that around here. It was something that I did when I was younger because I wanted to do something that was musical, that was adjunct to music, but could actually earn you some money because I knew music would probably never earn me any money. So I just went to this college in Edinburgh and learned how to tune pianos. And I'm very glad I did because now, 40 years later, I'm actually using that skill.
Yeah.
Which has come in very, very handy, I must say. That's another argument for learning a skill. Like if you can learn to do something with your hands or with yourself that is a unique sort of skill, that'll come in very useful in life.
Do you have perfect pitch?
No, you don't need it for tuning pianos. I've got very good pitch. I can tune a piano and know when something's not right. Most people wouldn't notice it, but I can tell when it's out a little bit, you know.
And is it true that every time you move a piano, you need to retune it? Or is that a bit of a myth?
That's true. Pianos are incredibly temperamental. They're old wooden things made of felt and wood and metal, and they contract and expand all the time. And the older they get, the crankier they get. And if you don't maintain them, they just get worse and worse and worse. Actually, you know, it's strange. Each one has its own personality. And when you start tuning it, you begin to form a relationship with that piano. You understand how to treat it. Because they all have very different qualities about the way they respond to things. It's very odd, actually. You feel like you get into a thing, all right, now I get how this piano is, you know. It takes about 10 minutes to figure it out. But then when you do, it's like, right, okay. And you know how to proceed then.
I like these instruments like a piano and like drums where you don't actually have to make the sound. I mean, with a guitar, you have to fret the note.
Yeah.
With a trumpet, you have to form the embouchure to make it work.
Yeah.
But you can just hit a piano and it makes a wonderful sound, or you can hit a drum and it makes a sound.
Paul McCartney, who doesn't read or write music, he's got a great video on YouTube where he explains how they learn to play the piano just by looking at the shapes of the fingers. And we figured out if we leave a gap there and a gap there and press that, that sounds quite good, And that's how they did it. Anybody can do that, and it just repeats. The octave just repeats up and down each way. Once you've learned it once, the chords, the majors and minors, you can get a tune out of it pretty quickly, actually. You're right. Things like finding finger positions on fiddles and oh my gosh, it's so hard.
I thought that some of your descriptions of the aging piano could well be applied to most human beings, the gradual decline and the clunking. And thought that was brilliant. I might steal it.
One thing that would be good to say is that it's great to have a creative focus to your life as you get older. I actually don't know what I would do with myself if I didn't have my music and my art.
It's vital.
It could be quite a miserable existence as you get older, couldn't it? Because the things that fascinate you as a younger person just sort of drop away. Everything drops away. So you've got to have something left that's really feeding you, I think. For me, that's why it's so important to be in the creative moment because, it actually sustains you for a very long time.
But I saw a very interesting interview with Dylan, who I can hear his influence sometimes when in some of your introductions. Is it okay to say that, Emil?
Yeah, sure. I love Dylan.
A little bit of Dylan flourish. That he can't do what he used to do. He can't do that anymore, that amazing turnout of stuff. Whereas I see some artists get older and their work actually improves. Which way around is it for you? Has your work improved, in your own opinion?
Oh, yeah, improved massively. Really. I mean, I think when I was younger, I was kind of flailing around looking for ways, for styles to identify myself with and for techniques, ways to play and sing. And now all that's gone. That's why it's so liberating being older, because now I just go, right, oh, poor man. Even I don't even have to sing in a particular accent. I can just make a character and live in that. And that's something I've never really done in the past. A lot of what I did before was all very earnest and confessional and all that sort of stuff. But now I don't really care about that. It's just, I just want to make something that gives me a sense of satisfaction that I've done it. And I don't get hung up on it. I do it and I move on to the next thing. I think I've learned where my limits are and where, your voice changes as you get older. There's things you can't sing anymore. I'm sure you know that. You just have to kind of settle into a place where you feel comfortable being who you are, authentically. If you can do that, you'll be fine with it. Don't get hung up on it. Just put it out in the world and let it go and move on to the next thing. Yeah. It's liberating. It really is.
Yes.
We are going to take a step back into your slightly older material, though, as our play-out song,
okay. Oh, yeah.
which is called Imbolc's song or Imbolc song.
Is it Imbolc, the Celtic thing?
Yeah, it's Celtic. You've got Imbolc and Lytha and Lammas and Mabon and Samhain and Ostara and Beltane. These are all the festivals of the year that mark the changing of the seasons and the astronomical changes in the sky. But they're very keenly observed by some people. It's a pagan Celtic tradition. Imbolc was written around the springtime, and it was really a reflection of the cycle of life. It's divided into seasons. There's a very much an earth, air, fire, water element. If you listen to the lyrics, you'll see that. And it's all about the cyclical nature of it. You just go through life. And who knows, as it says at the end, no one knows if we'll pass this way again. Yeah. But I'll walk with you until the journey's end.
Well, the tide turns in and the tide turns out. So as a lover of the sea and a dweller on the coast of Brighton, which isn't quite the same, I know, you get elements of it, when there's nobody around.
Yeah, you sure do.
So I love this. It's great.
What next for you, Emil, when you turn your hand to some new creative venture? Will it be in stone, painting, writing, music, or all of the above?
Well, I like having the ability to choose between a few different things. It's a bit like Joni Mitchell with her painting and her music. When you're not doing one, you're doing the other. And it's actually quite a relief to be able to look at a different type of creativity for a while you recharge your batteries in the other department. Mm-hmm. For me, I will do all of those things, painting, stone carving, music, as long as I possibly can. I don't have a plan. I don't know what will come next. I do love collaborating with other people, though. And actually, I should say, one of the great pleasures of being creative is helping other people with their creativity. I've done a lot of songwriting workshops and songwriting projects with other people. There was a bunch of army and services veterans. I did a big songwriting project with them recently. What I love about it is seeing how much other people get out of it when you can be a kind of a catalyst to unlock the creativity in someone else. Actually, that's even better than making your own stuff, I think.
Agreed.
Because it makes you feel that you've done something really good for somebody, given them something. And I love that feeling. So I'd like to maybe do a bit more of that in the future. We'll see.
Good.
Bringing the wisdom of your age to projects.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far.
Well, look, it's been a joy to talk with you and be pumped full of creativity and to listen to your songs.
Yeah.
We're going to play out with Imbolc's song.
Yeah.
Am I saying it right?
Imbolc. Yeah, it's got a hard C on the end. Imbolc.
Okay.
I just think this podcast is so fantastic, guys. Thank you so much for talking to me. It's been brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And it's a mutual affection for each other's work. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
And here's Imbolc's song.
Tide turns in, tide turns out. Tide turns into the ocean. Raindrops fall on your rooftop while you sleep, and you dream again of standing on the shore. Moon rise up, moon sink down. Moonlight soft on the mountains. And some dark days can cast a shadow on the sun, but it won't be long before the light returns. Heartwood flickers into flame. Firelight plays on our faces, and all these things that we reach for in the night to be found again, embers in the dawn. Road turn left, road turn right. Road runs out into the open. No one knows if we'll pass this way again, but I'll walk with you until the journey's end, and I'll be with you as we go round again.
Creageivity. If you think you're too old to be creative or too creative to be old, tune in to the Creageivity podcast.